Wild and beautiful places have shaped me into who I am. They're my muse, my North Star, especially the sea. Appreciation of the mystery and the power of this planet and its many life forms nourishes me every single day. I believe that I can show respect and gratitude for the space I take up, the food I consume, the water I use, by living a life dedicated to the well-being of others, including those non-humans with whom I share the planet, and that I really depend upon for my life itself. So I am a maker, a creator. I believe that to create something is to distill the world into meaning and beauty. This is where the magic comes in. I'm going to do this by making intricate print impressions with ink and paper directly from the living beings that inhabit the land, water, and air here at the Oregon coast where I live. Now, these creatures all have one thing in common. They are expressions of the fresh and salty waters that meet here on the western edge of a continent. I'll be using a really cool process to do so. An ancient and traditional craft practiced both in Europe and in Japan for centuries. So let's go east for a moment. I'm going to give you a quick primer on Gyotaku. Now, gyo is fish. Taku is rubbing or an impression. So this is a tradition that grew up not out of fine art, but more from a desire to document. So first step is we're going to cut some paper. So this paper is called ma, like your mom. It comes from the paper mulberry tree. This print that I'm making today would last up to 500 years if properly cared for. And these pieces will be, for this piece we're going to create out of a yellow cedar tree that I cut and then sanded and then burned and brushed out. And then we're going to have some seabird feathers and some kelp. So by land, by sea, by air. So, step number 2, ink. So, how does art help us understand water better, you might ask? Well, what better way than exploring the lives of those creatures water makes possible? To look deeply at the diversity of creatures that inhabit the land, sea, and air around us and make beautiful images out of them. To me, this is really an active form of reverence. So taking impressions of wild things by running my hands over their forms, it allows me to understand and learn from them by really, really looking closely at their design and function, as well as the way they live their lives. Okay. This practice blends science and art together. It's both a creative expression and a collaboration with a creature to record a life lived in exquisite and accurate detail. So these feathers that I have collected have fallen from birds that frequent the Pacific shoreline and the Salmon River estuary down below us here. Birds that travel long distances in the freedom of the air. And one of the most beautiful sea plants of the West Coast thrives here, giant kelp. Forests of kelp are in constant motion while emitting pure oxygen and helping create 70% of every breath us mammals will ever take in our lifetimes. But let's turn to the land, trees. They are rooted and immobile, making the best of a fixed set of circumstances. This rare yellow cedar is a native to the water-rich coastal regions of the Pacific Northwest. It's renowned for its straight grain and its fragrant smell and the history of its use by native peoples. 150-year-old yellow cedar. We ink the printing press. Art illuminates science, speaks to us lower down in our bodies, in the heart, instinctual. going beyond simple facts. Where my father taught me to draw, calling it tracing God's line.
This beautiful sea plant.
And when we're making something, our brain is actually working in a totally different mode of processing information than when we're involved in an intellectual or analytical activity. I spent 30 some odd years as a sport and commercial fisherman before I really looked closely at sea creatures. I finally really saw them when I started printing them. The intricate pattern of scales where the body and the tail of a salmon meet is amazing. The multicolored depth of their eyes. There's a pigment cell on the patterns on the cape of an octopus. Astounding. Step 1, feathers by air. Step 2, sea plant by sea. And then here we go. Here's number 3, 151-year-old yellow cedar tree. By land, by sea, by air. Texture and living things are all around us all the time, no matter where you live, really. So you might try using this method to create something yourself. It just might change the way you see the world, as it has for me. For complete information on materials in the printing process, click the link in the descriptions below. During the printing process, I believe we all become ambassadors for these creatures, witnessing them in paper and ink, forging a deeper relationship with the natural world. And it makes me feel a deeper sense of connection and being a part of a family of beings.
Where did it carry it?
So in the space of just a couple of hours, we have created a piece that will last for a lifetime, reminding us of these remarkable water-dependent creatures. We spend a lot of time thinking about our fellow human beings, our families, politics, pandemics. But this deep looking into other species, other ways of living, allows us to step out of our humanness for a moment, allows a rare glimpse into the lives of these non-humans and to appreciate their beauty, what their lives stand for, and how deeply interdependent we are on each other.
Look at all those years.
And in knowing them, love them. And in loving them, wanting to provide them the same kind of future we want. For we are bound together, united by water, here on this marvelous, massive blue marble spinning in space. I am a minority in a majority of wildness. A solitary black figure against an expanse of sea at the edge. This headland, with its golden bent grasses in the late light, has called me, like a thirst rising in the back of my throat. At this moment, I am losing and gaining everything simultaneously, emptied out of separation at last. Minorities inherit a wisdom that the majority will never know. In this time of almost 8 billion human souls, I have quietly taken my place at the table with all that lies rooted and washed and blown across the open spaces above. I return home, back into the linear, right-angled walls of my own making, a place that is deeply bent to my will. And yet, every cell in my body is still echoing the wild, singing out, I have drunk from the well.